it's hard to discover purpose without emotional intelligence. And it's definitely difficult to deploy purpose without emotional intelligence, because one of the things that emotional intelligence gives you, the first quadrant of emotional intelligence, is self-awareness. If a person isn't self-aware, you can't be aware of what you've been created to do. The second quadrant is, after self-awareness, there's self-management. So I need to be aware of where I am and what's going on with me emotionally. Then I need to have the ability to manage those emotions in a way that it doesn't lead to self-destructive behavior. Like, you can be called to do something, but then that imposter syndrome snipes your assignment. You can be called to do something, but then people pleasing snipes that assignment.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here, and more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Munroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they have overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charisa Munroe, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another amazing episode of the Purpose Finder podcast, where our mission is simple: to inspire you to find and uncover your life's purpose, and to live a life overflowing with those three things: meaning, fulfillment, and significance. Why? Because we all crave belonging. No one wants to feel unfulfilled, and we are all searching, asking that big question: why in the world am I here? But I hope you allow your search to end right here on this podcast. I am your host, Charisa Munroe, and today I sit down with an amazing, incredible human being. He's not only talking about purpose, he doesn't only dream about it, but he's actually living it out and walking in his purpose boldly. We're going to learn some stories and some lessons that has been on his journey along his way to the mountaintop of his true calling. Help me welcome Dr. Dharius Daniels. Doc, how are you? It is such a pleasure to have you here on the pod.
Well, I'm doing fantastic. I'm really excited about our conversation, man. Thank you so much for that introduction. And listen, I just learned something. I was taking mental notes. Uh, mental notes as you were talking about the purpose of the podcast. So I'm grateful to be in this space. I'm grateful for what you're doing. I'm excited about the impact that it's having, and the impact that it's going to have.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I couldn't, as I was thinking about who would be my next guest, I had to reach out, and I said he would be perfect. I know my dad, the late Dr. Miles Munroe, was all about purpose, and his messages, no matter where he went around the world, before anyone can do anything, he knew that he had to get them to understand why they were here, so that when they die, they are dying empty and not full.
Yeah.
And you are next to him who, I mean, everything you talk about is purpose. You have a whole book on purpose. You talk about it. There are just videos and messages everywhere. And I said you would be a good addition, a good asset to the podcast for the listeners to hear themselves in your story, hear
Mm.
themselves in your journey, and also hear their situations and your challenges. And I know that whatever comes out of your mouth as you advise and as you drop those gems, one life can be changed today. So I'm excited to have you here. I'm not going to
No,
read a
I'm so
bio.
excited.
Nobody is interested in hearing what I have to say. They are interested in you, however. So please tell us from your heart, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And just a little bit about your journey up to where you are now.
Yeah. So I I actually am going to give you a very concise Cliff Note version. All right. So For those people that are listening, I was born in a small town in Mississippi called Kilmichael, Mississippi, and I'm gonna tell you why that's significant in a minute. The population at that time when I was there was probably like 800 people. So, like, literally one doctor for the entire town, one full-time police officer, one part-time police officer, and the part-time police officer covered the night shift, but he drove my school bus during the day. So that's the town that I came from. Here's why I bring that up. In a small town like that, there's not a lot to do recreationally. So you do most things relationally. So that small town, that upbringing taught me the value and the importance of people. And I think that's significant because that is the way I am using, and that is the way I intend to use my life. And that is to use the years and the strength and the ability that God gives me to serve God's greatest creation, which is God's people. I want to help God's people do what they were born to do. And here's the way I frame it. I say, part of my destiny is to help other people reach theirs. So that's through the ministry that we do through our churches, Change Church, and the ministry that we do in the marketplace in the area of coaching and raising up coaches and speakers so that they can use those gifts to change other people's lives as well.
And so, as you think about coming from, because you remind me, coming from Mississippi, a small town,
Hmm.
800 people. I'm also reminded about my dad, who comes from this island. Literally, the dot on the map is this small; you could barely see us. But yet he is this giant of a person. He's this giant of a personality. He's this giant of a legend. And here you are, also a giant in the work that you do. And it speaks to remembering where you're from, keeping an eye on where you're from, but not letting where you're from determine what you become. And so,
Mm.
how did you allow along the way, from being in a small town of only 800 people, how did you not allow that to stifle you becoming and being so great of a guy?
I'm going to attribute that, besides God's grace, I'm going to attribute that to one person, right? And this person embodied this principle. The person I'm referring to is my father.
Mm.
The person I'm referring to is my father. And he embodied this principle to me. I call it the principle of proximity. Whoever has your ear has your future. And
Mm.
so my father spoke affirmation, possibility, responsibility into me in such a way that I never saw my environment as limiting. I saw my environment as a launching pad. And so even though it was a small town, even though there wasn't a lot of opportunities for upward mobility in that particular town, um, it was like my father helped me see that that destination didn't have to be my destiny. And so I was able to see things in the eyes in my heart that I never got to see with the eyes in my head until I got out of that town. But God used my father, I think, to help me see that my destination at that time did not have to be my destiny.
You said something just now. You said you didn't see with the, or you had to see with the eyes of your heart.
Yeah. Yep. I didn't see with the eyes in my head. There are things I saw with the eyes in my heart that I didn't see with the eyes in my head. The eyes in your head give you sight. The eyes in
Mm-hmm.
your heart give you
Give you
vision.
vision. Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was like my father would speak and I would see.
Mm-hmm.
like he would speak and I would see. I remember when I first got when he was walking me through my sense of call to ministry. And I was having conversations with him about what I was feeling and sensing, and he was coaching and walking me through that. And I remember him saying to me, he was like, "Hey, all right, you're going to be the first. You can be the first in our family to actually earn a doctorate." He says, you can go to seminary like Reverend Dr. Martin King went to seminary. I didn't even know what seminary was. So I didn't have a frame of reference. There are no seminaries in Kilmichael, Mississippi. There are no colleges in Kilmichael, Mississippi. So I didn't see those things with the eyes in my head, but I saw them with the eyes in my heart. So when he
Mm.
spoke, I saw, and I saw beyond where I was.
Now, can you tie in the importance or even the significance of vision and purpose, whether it pertains to your life, just kind of as you connect them, because I know that they are very much connected.
They
And
are, yeah.
yes,
For me, vision is a picture of God's preferred future. So it is a picture of God's preferred future. Now, for me, it connects to purpose because purpose is God's preferred future for you. And I think that's incredibly important. So they are connected, right? So they're connected. They are similar, yet at the same time, they're distinct. So I think your father defines purpose this way: the reason for the creation or the existence of a thing. That's the way he defined purpose. Vision is when God gives you a preview of the thing you've been created for. So if purpose is the reason for the creation or the existence of a thing, vision is when God gives you a preview of what you've been created
of that
for.
very thing.
Yeah,
Oh, so you almost can't have one without the other.
you can't. You can't.
You shouldn't
Yeah.
have one without the other. And even and I don't know that there is necessarily a right way on which one comes first, but they are both there. Even if it's a vision that you see first, like you may see a vision of the future, you may see a vision for the next generation, you may have a vision of the world that you would like to see, and then now it becomes your, now how do I bring that to pass? How do I, what's my role in playing? And one of the things that I know you talk about, Dad talked about it as well, is your purpose is very connected to the problem that you are here to solve. And so usually the vision that you have is connected to the problem that you would like to see solved. And it makes me think about Dr. Martin Luther King, who had a dream. Like his dream was the vision that he had for America, for the world. And we are still living, which is why my dad says the visionaire may die, but the vision will always live on.
Mm-hmm.
Always live
Mm-hmm.
on.
Yeah. No, it's strong. I love that.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the purpose being tied to a problem that you've been created to solve. And I think the way I frame it, I think I talked about this in my, I don't know, something. Maybe it was my latest book, a message or something. But it's this idea of unique agitation. So you're going to be uniquely agitated by what you've been assigned to. So the example for me biblically is David, right? Who is actually bringing lunch to, or bringing food to his brothers who are in the military. And he hears Goliath insulting the armies of Israel. So he's uniquely agitated by this giant problem. He's like, who's this Philistine? Like, it's almost like he's saying, y'all don't hear this? They were bothered but they weren't, Israel was bothered, the men were bothered, but they weren't bothered enough to do something about it. So they were agitated, but David had a unique agitation. And so me and you and other people, we can walk in an environment and we can see the same thing and it bother you and it not bother me. And maybe one of the reasons a person is uniquely agitated by it is because you've been assigned to it. The Goliath that you are uniquely agitated by is the Goliath you've probably been born to knock down.
I like that. What's your unique agitation?
Yeah.
And on the podcast, I say all the time, purpose comes in all different shapes, sizes, colors, and textures. And so there's
Mm-hmm.
no need for us to have to compete. I promise you, there are enough problems out there in the world. And there are more than enough people to solve all our problems, especially if you come together and unify all of the gifts and talents that we have. And so when you recognize that Johnny is doing so amazing because he's walking in his calling and he's walking in his unique calling after his unique agitation, If you can figure out what your unique agitation is, then there wouldn't be any need for you to compare yourself or wonder, well, why aren't I,
Mm,
doing and feeling the way that Johnny is. Well, Johnny is walking in his unique calling. He's figured that out. What is yours?
that's
And I
strong.
love how you put it as unique agitation. My dad says, what is it that makes you angry? Like it's the same thing. And what may make you angry may not make me angry. So go after what makes you angry. Because what makes me angry, I'm gonna walk in that. And I'm gonna excel in that. If you come running after me, you will always fail. You will always fail. And my dad was one of those persons who he was very much against following anybody, whether it's a trend, whether it's a fashion trend, whether it's a business trend. Like if it wasn't truly aligned with who he was and what he was doing, he wasn't gonna follow. And but my brother, on the other hand, loved the brand name. So the Michael Jordans and the Gucci's, and and I'm talking way back when. His taste has elevated since then, but nonetheless, he liked the name brand. And my dad had no problem walking into Walmart and picking up some white sweet water tennis. And we used to just get embarrassed every time we have to go to Disney World because he's gonna wear these shoes and he's gonna wear these shoes proudly. But he was perfectly fine with
Yeah.
that, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars to wear. I because by the time you spend that amount of money or value on something, you're not wearing the thing. You've now put somebody's name
Mm,
on you. And he's like,
hmm.
no, this shoe from Walmart, it's not going to give me value. I'm going to give it
Yeah.
value. And he walked
Yeah.
around so proudly, Dr. Darius, in these white Sweetwater tennis. And we're like, Dad, really? And he's like, yeah, I don't care about the name brand. They don't define me. And so even though, like, to this day, I think about that. To this day, I think about the value that we give to things because of the value that our creator gave to us.
That's good.
And the following is just, but again, you also notice I said he knew who he was. And as you think about, like, as we talk about you coming out of Mississippi, where it was just a small town, 800 people, as you learned who you were and therefore who you were going to be, what was that struggle, if there was a struggle, along that journey of becoming who Dharius Daniels was born to be?
I think the show for everyone is different. I think for me, there are probably a few that stick out, few few struggles that kind of stick out to me the most. The first of which was, it's almost like I had a sense of who I was supposed to be, and I was looking for someone else who was already that, and I couldn't find them. And it took me to adulthood. I think a significant part of my adulthood journey. It took me getting there to realize I was looking for me. Right. I had a sense of call to something, to be something that I was looking for, like almost like a specific and an exact example of that. And I realized that didn't exist because I was supposed to be that. And so I feel like for me, I wasted a lot of time trying to find in one person something that I wasn't going to get from one person, that God would use multiple people, that I would glean multiple things from, and He would use that to shape and mold me into who um, He called me to be. So I feel like that's one. The other is this, and I'm gonna be very transparent here, and I'm not saying everybody had this struggle, but I did. There was always this desire on my end to feel normal, but I felt like I never was. And when I say normal, I'm not saying I'm abnormal or weird, but when I say normal, I mean conventional. I mean to kind of swim in the same stream that everybody else swam in. And as long as I can remember, I've just felt not that. And I feel like I spent a large part of my life fighting for conformity. That's you know what I mean? A lot of times we gotta fight for non-conformity. I felt like I was fighting for conformity, and I feel like that showed up in the way I approached ministry early on, fighting for conformity, following conventional routes, doing things conventional ways, um, until I realized and recognized that chasing conformity is actually expression of fear.
Hmm.
Chasing your uniqueness is expression of faith.
So was the unique aspect the answer to this very challenge that you're talking about?
I think it was. I
I
think
think it was.
so. Here's the way I frame it. Your uniqueness, one, has to be understood. So there has to be a sense of clarity on the unique contribution that you've been called to make. Number two, there has to be an embracing of that uniqueness. So the understanding of it, I think, is a moment of divine clarity. That's spiritual intelligence. The embracing of it is much more emotional intelligence. That is dealing with all of the competing issues and affections of your soul that you get to a place of contentment regarding your calling. See, a lot of talk about contentment is connected to possessions. I'm saying contentment also has to be connected to your calling, not just contentment with possessions, but contentment with purpose. And I think some people can't walk in theirs because they feel like what they've been called to walk in isn't enough. They aren't content. And so I feel like that's an issue of like emotional intelligence. And then the other is embrace, not just embracing, not just understanding, not just embracing, but then unleashing. That is having the courage to actually walk in that uniqueness. It is literally, it's one thing to take off Saul's armor. It's another thing to have the courage to run at a giant with a slingshot. And so for me, I feel like yes, those three kind of components help deal with the other issue that you and I just mentioned.
Now let's talk a lot more about emotional intelligence, because also saw in your bio that people
Yeah.
will be able to see in the description that you are an emotional intelligence specialist.
Yes.
And it's also one of the things that I've been studying even more now.
Hmm.
And I'm a social worker by profession.
Okay.
And so I'm learning how important emotional intelligence is to just the human
Yes.
and the way that we think. But I don't know that. And you shared something with me, and I'm forcing, I'm making myself not go there, Doc, and I will not go there. But please share with us the connection with emotional intelligence and purpose, or emotional intelligence and spiritual intelligence, and how
Yeah.
they aren't, there isn't a dichotomy, like there is a fusion and an intertwining
Yes.
between the two of them.
Yep. So I'll start with like spirituality. Peter Scazzaro, who wrote Emotional Healthy Spirituality, he he has this, I think, quintessential quote. He says, "You cannot be spiritually mature without becoming emotionally healthy." It's just you cannot. Here's the way I frame that. Unfortunately, the impact of spirituality is often limited to our ethics. It is how more ethical are you becoming? And I'm not just saying that's incorrect. I'm saying that's incomplete. I'm saying that's a great
Mm,
place to start. It's not a great
in
place to
there.
it's not a great place to finish. Right? Okay, that's the floor of the house, is not the ceiling. Like ethics is where we start, right? It's not where we finish. Because the course and the quality of your life is not just going to be determined by the quality or the standard of your ethics. It's going to be determined by the quality or the condition of your soul, which includes your emotions. And so when you talk about like a person's quality of life, how you're doing emotionally is how you're doing. I want you to think about that. How you're doing emotionally, that's really how you're doing. Now, your economics determine your standard of living, square footage, possessions, etc. Your emotional health determines your quality of life. And so when a person is actually growing spiritually, what is being formed is actually their heart. their soul. And even if we just like take a deeper dive into what those of us who in Christian spaces would call the fruit of the spirit, the majority of that fruit shows up emotionally. Joy, peace, temperance, which is self-control. So there's an impact there. And then as it relates to purpose, I don't think it's hard to discover purpose without emotional intelligence. And it's definitely difficult to deploy purpose without emotional intelligence, because one of the things that emotional intelligence gives you, the first quadrant of emotional intelligence, is self-awareness. It's literally the first quadrant. And so if a person isn't self-aware, you can't be aware of what you've been created to do. I know that's really simple, but the implications of it, I think, are super important. You can't do, and then the second quadrant is, after self-awareness, there's self-management. So I need to be aware of where I am and what's going on with me emotionally. Then I need to have the ability to manage those emotions in a way that it doesn't lead to self-destructive behavior. And I think that's key and critical, right? Because it's one thing to be aware of what I've been called and created to do. Then it's another thing to have my emotions managed in a way that my emotions don't snipe my assignment. I call them emotional snipers. Like, you can be called to do something, but then that imposter syndrome snipes your assignment. You can be called to do something, but then people pleasing snipes that assignment. So I think it plays a huge role. And I think it's probably one of the most underestimated aspects of human development, which is why, as a person that is passionate about change and helping humans optimize, it's why I got my coaching, why I got a certification in it, because I realized I can't help people change anything without helping them change that.
Exactly. And we go a step further. Purpose is has very little to do with you,
Mm-hmm.
the deployment of it, and it has everything to do with the people that you serve.
That's
Well,
right.
emotional intelligence is also, by definition, being self-aware of your own emotions, but also being self-aware and how to manage the emotions of others.
Yeah.
Well, if my purpose has absolutely nothing to do with me and everything to do with the people that I serve, then it's gonna behoove me to
Mm-hmm.
be able to be aware that they too are emotional beings, and
Yes.
how do I manage theirs? And then how do I manage both my emotions and theirs at the same time, so we can actually work together as opposed to be fighting? I mean, I can
Yeah.
go on and on. Clearly, you and I can go on and on into the whole emotional intelligence thing, because it is so important. It is so important.
Strong.
And one of the things that I'm a strong believer in is, it's no different than, as we were talking about emotional intelligence, spiritual intelligence, and you can't have one without the other. They two go hand in hand. It's like your business. You want your business to grow, but from a personal development perspective, you're also at an all-time low. Like, your business will not go any further than your personal development level is. And so if your business is at a 5 and you want that to be a 10, but your personal development and the way you think and your social and your emotional intelligence and your mindset is at a 2, your business ain't going nowhere but down.
Mm,
No different than your personal development isn't going to go any further than your spiritual development.
so good.
And so I remember when I was in my season of looking for a coach, and I wanted, all because I wanted my business to grow. That's all I wanted. It was about it was about 6 years after my parents passed, and it
Yeah.
was about 5 years ago. Okay, and I needed to find a coach because I knew that I was meant for more, but I knew that I was stuck because I had gone as far as the current knowledge I had would take me. So I knew that I needed more knowledge, more information, and further guidance. So I was looking for a coach. I just wanted my business to grow. That's all I wanted. Found a great coach, told her this is what I wanted. And the first homework that she had me do was uh, work on your time management schedule. And then I need to sign up for a women's retreat. Why am I going to a retreat? And I hate retreats, okay? At the time, hated retreats. You want me to go to a retreat? And she was putting on a women's retreat. But she also knew my story. So she also knew that 5 years ago I lost my parents and I may have still been dealing with grief. But she knew this. I did. Anyway, my coach, I hired her, so whatever she says, I'm following. So I go to this retreat. And I don't know what I'm thinking. I'm just like, let me just go do this 4-day retreat, get it out of the way. And I get there and make a long story short. It's one of those retreats where every day, all day, you cry. Then they got you, facing challenges and things and ideas and thoughts and issues in your life that you need to address.
Mm,
And I didn't come here to talk about my parents. I didn't
yeah.
come here to deal with what I was dealing with. I didn't know this what it was, but I had no idea that she understood being 25, 30 years ahead of the game. She understood that in order for my business to grow, there was some closure, there was some healing that needed to happen in my life personally around the grief and loss of my parents that I was trying to stay away from and that I wasn't touching. So because she was so in tune into emotional intelligence and what it was, she understood that Charisa's business development will not grow if her personal development state is where it's at. Let's deal with that first. So we dealt with that. Some things happened, some great breakthroughs happened, some transformations happened. I was finally able to go home after not going home for 7 years after they had passed. I was finally able to just bring some closure to some things. And then I was able to be a lot more clear. I had more clarity, I had more freedom. So now my business was able to grow because I was able to be who I needed to be for it to do that. And that would not have been the case if I hadn't dealt with the very things that I needed to deal with. All because you understand that emotional, spiritual, physical, mental, like all of these things do matter when it comes to your calling, when it comes to your life. And even when I think about you talking about holding on to normal, like when you finally got to a point when you let go of holding on to normal, what was that feeling for you?
One, you got me messed up. I'm you, you
I apologize.
what you
No,
just said
sorry.
was
Not sorry.
so important, and I mean, I mean, I wish everybody, at least in my relational orbit, could hear that compartmentalization, at least as it relates to your emotional life. It's a myth. It's a myth. Anyway, that was so profound. All right. So what it felt like, it felt I felt fear before doing it. I felt freedom after
Mm,
doing it.
mm,
And now I feel fulfillment. So it
Y'all
was
caught
fear
those
first.
F's?
It was fear first. Then when I did it, it was like, man, I feel free because I don't feel like I'm being a chameleon. I don't feel like I'm conforming. And then after, I think the reward of like the highest form of compensation to me, as it relates to your calling, is not just the contribution you make to others; it's the fulfillment you get from doing it. It's
Absolutely.
more blessed to give
Absolutely.
than to receive. And so, as I kind of walked in that uniqueness more, what I got was the fulfillment from seeing the impact that me walking in that uniqueness actually had. Because it's like, specifically, like in my line of work, like if I look at the ministry space and then if I look at the coaching space, there is, um, there are kind of best practices, but people also can take on like not just the practices, but also like the personalities
Mm,
of some of the most quote unquote successful people in those spaces. And if that aligns with who you are, I think, I don't know, maybe that's okay. But if it is not authentically who you've been made to be, taking on those personalities can kind of feel like prison, you know?
mm,
And
mm-hmm,
being free from that and seeing like, man, there are people that are being impacted that would not have been impacted if I hadn't kind of stepped into the authenticity of who I was. Like seeing that brings a degree and a dimension of fulfillment that I just think is worth the price of discomfort that I had to pay to kind of step out of the boat so I could walk on water.
I'm here in Mexico City at the Pave the Path Retreat 2024.
This first day has been amazing.
We tend to look for answers on the outside of ourselves, but a lot of our solutions to our problems are on the inside of us.
If I had to wrap this up in one word, I would use the word transformative.
One thing I learned day one is, I guess, be open to the applause when you have people that are on your side cheering you on.
Transformation is a process, so I don't expect us to get to a place where we're completely transformed. You should never be transformed. There should always be a transforming continually happening.
My relationship to love is that I believe love is something you have to conquer. So I always go for challenging people versus love is something that you find, or love is something that finds you, where then I would date the people who actually want to be with me and not the ones who are avoiding.
If you want to return home unrecognizable, make sure you are with us next year. You don't want to miss such a beautiful experience.
I've already been thinking of people that I want to run home and tell, and I'm excited to come back next year.
Position yourself to be poured into so you can be served from your overflow, but make sure that who and what is pouring into you is pouring in life. It's pouring in empowerment. It's pouring in good, positive vibes, because you don't want to be filling and pouring and overflowing on serving the people you serve with a bunch of oil.
Y'all better come on this retreat.
And it brings me to something you said to me off stage. You said that purpose is, it's about the what. It's about the what, but it's also about the way.
Yes.
So please share with my listeners what you share with me and some.
Yep. Like purpose is not just about what a person has been called to do, but also the way that they've been called to do it. And so I'll use like an analogy of, let's use your father for an example, right? So there might be people who would say, hey, me and your father, like them and your father both share a similar calling to optimize humans. And I've got this whole, I won't get into it, but this whole like theology of what it means to be a human, and how a human isn't just a gang of cells, but a habitation for the divine. So you can't be fully human without the divine. Anyway, someone say, hey, we're both called to optimize humans, but, and they may say, we're both called to use our brains, our mind, our educational teaching gifting to be able to do that. Just say, okay, two people called to optimize humans, two people called to use the teaching gift to do it. What's going to be different is the difference between the way one person would fight Goliath and another person would fight Goliath. Saul tried to give David his armor, and David tried it on, but then came to the conclusion, I'm supposed to fight this battle. I'm just not supposed to fight it this way. And David, even putting on the armor, to me was an expression of honor. He refused to be arrogant. He was like, I know that this has worked in previous battles. But just because it worked in previous battles, and just because it worked for one person, doesn't mean it works for me. So I'm going to fight the same battle, but I'm going to do it a different way. I'm not using a sword. I'm not using a spear. I'm using a slingshot. And so when we look at, let's take someone like your father, he didn't use a sword. He didn't use a spear. He used a slingshot. So one, the slingshot in terms of the way he taught. Your hand would catch a cramp trying to take notes with what your dad said. I got
Facts.
17, it's like 17 points, Dr. Monroe, 17 points.
Exactly. And he gonna give you
Okay.
all 17 of them too.
Se- 17 points. So like in terms of the way that he taught, and then in terms of the content that he used, which we would say like, yo, that was his rock, and the courage it took to say, hey, yeah, we're gonna optimize humans, but we can't optimize humans unless they understand the King's way. And I've got to introduce them to the King's way, and I've got to fight for the King's way. And so part of what he was born to do wasn't just teach, but it was to teach a certain way. And that way is a way that resonated with people like me who say, who needed more than church colloquialisms to change my life, who needed, and it's not that other methods weren't effective. It was those methods weren't effective for me. I needed someone where I didn't feel like I had to leave my brain in the car when I walked into a church building. And so the way he did it spoke to people like myself. And when a person is unwilling to fight their Goliath the way God's called them to do it, then the person is robbing Israel of the benefits of that Goliath coming down. So Israel didn't have to fight that giant because David took care of it. And there's some giants I don't have to fight because your father took care of it.
Exactly. But it goes back to the word you've been talking about this whole time, and that word of unique. Just like how what's your unique agitation? What's your unique gift? What's
Yeah.
your unique way?
Yeah.
There's a way that my father is and was that's going to be different from the way that I or my brother do the
Yeah.
very same thing, continue the very same thing that he did.
That's right.
And so I have a whole podcast on purpose, and I know people are saying, "Oh, another purpose thing," but like when my father has drilled into me the importance of purpose, and then I grasp it for myself and understand that it is purpose that gave me the life that I needed to continue after they were taken from me. Of course, I'm going to have a whole podcast about it, and of course, I'm going to want to continue to get other people, new generation, next generation, to understand that, man, if you don't have a life with purpose, you might as well be dead. But I'm going to do it a different way. Am I going to be Pastor Charisa? No, I won't.
Yeah.
And I would wish that people would stop saying, "Oh, are you going to follow in your father's footsteps? Are you going to wear your dad's shoes?" No. What if my shoes are going to be a lot bigger
Yeah.
than his?
That's right.
And so there's a unique way to it, and I love that you talk about that. Like that's what I walk away with after listening to our conversation and just kind of gleaning from you. And it's what is your unique agitation? What is your unique way? What is your unique gift?
Yeah.
And it brings me to, I would love for you to share about 2014
Yes.
in your life. You're a coach, you're a facilitator, you're a pastor, you're a specialist, you're so many things. And 2014 was a bit of a tough year for you.
It was the most, started in 2014 and went into 2015. Just some of the most difficult years of my life. So, and I think it kind of points back to what we were just discussing earlier, because it was during that time of crisis really that I got clarity about some things that I'm walking in now. I got clarity on some things I was supposed to be doing and some clarity on the way I was supposed to do things. And so, long story short, I hit what some people in my space would call the wall. Right? I had in religious spaces, we call it the dark night of the soul. And so I was doing, I think I was 2014, I was finishing up doctoral work. I was writing my first book. I was leading our churches. I was traveling, speaking. And so I hit this wall of like physical burnout and like had a mental, not breakdown, but I had a panic attack. And what was interesting is that happened to me and I was doing all the things they tell you to do in church. I was reading my Bible. I was engaging in prayer. I was fasting during Lent. I was loving my wife. I was raising my kids, but I wasn't setting boundaries. I wasn't
The
managing
practical
my
stuff.
time. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't using a framework for how to manage my week. I wasn't dealing with issues that were not unethical, but they were still unhealthy. People pleasing, overcommitting, things of that particular nature.
Things that high achievers do.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And so long story short is my body and my mind just got to the point that said, boom, this is
To shut
enough.
you down.
And
Mm.
shut me down. And so long story short is during that particular season. So this happened, I think, in like October of 2014, and I was just so happened to scheduled to have my last doctoral week-long seminar the very next week. And that seminar was with Dr. Archibald Hart, who is the former dean of the School of Psychology at Fuller Seminary. And the cohort was on the minister's personal health. And literally that entire week, he talked about rest and he talked about soul care and the Sabbath and all of these things that I had never heard. And he brought his daughter in to do a session, and she was a coach. And he brought a therapist. Well, he was actually a therapist, so he brought one of his colleagues in, and they kind of talked from two perspectives. And I left that week saying, I need two things: I need a counselor to help me deal with my past, and I need a coach to help me deal with my future. And literally, I came back, I got those two pieces in my life, and it literally revolutionized the way that I lived my life. And I got a revelation that I was doing what God called me to do, but I wasn't doing it the way he called me to do it. And my issue wasn't ethics. My issue was my emotions. And some of those things, it took me a while to, I think some of it's a lifelong process, but it took me a while to work through some of that. And I came out of that season with this philosophy: you can reach your goals without destroying your soul.
Oh, yes.
And,
Yes. You can reach your goals without
yeah,
destroying your soul.
yeah, and that's the way I'm gonna do it. That's the way I'm gonna reach my goals I'm not gonna destroy my soul to reach my goals.
And I'm happy for the people that are listening, especially the men. Dr. Daniels, can you talk to the men? And I want to talk to the men because I want the men to see that even the biggest of the greatest of the best of men can, for lack of a better word, fall.
Mm-hmm.
But it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that you are weak, doesn't mean that you can't get up, doesn't mean that you are stuck, doesn't mean that you are no longer useful. It just means that you have to make some changes and adjustments. But they don't want to hear from me. Please talk to the men about just just briefly, go into some things that you have dealt with as a man and what you've had to do to get yourself out of it, starting with awareness and acknowledgement.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll start there with those two words. Like, I had to become aware that I was operating with it wasn't theology. I was operating with an ideology of masculinity that somehow felt like self-neglect was an expression of manhood. Now that's just, it was dumb. Like, I don't have a pretty word for it. It was dumb. It was literally like, so I wouldn't have verbalized it. Like, so if you would have asked me that, I wouldn't have said that. But it was an unconscious, I don't think all of our ideologies are conscious. It was an unconscious ideology I was operating with that had connected negligence, bad stewardship of yourself with masculinity. Like, a man, I don't need to eat. I'm a man. I don't need to sleep. I'm a man. I don't need to deal with my emotions. So it was backwards. It was jaded. Watch this. It was self-destructive. And in addition to that, it was not helpful or optimal to those that I love the most. Because what I didn't talk about, and at some point I need to talk about this more publicly, what I didn't talk about is that when I hit that wall, it didn't just reveal to me how I was mismanaging me. It revealed to me how my self-negligence was also producing negligence in terms of my ability to love and serve those well I was responsible for. So in all of my running into this wall, I was running past my wife and running past my children and running past my friendships and running past my family. And, in my line of work, I sometimes am with people or families when someone's transitioning out of this life. And here's what I've seen. I have never seen somebody who's dying ask for things. They always ask for people. They always ask. And I was running past that which mattered more, running toward something that matters less. And I would say that to every man that is watching. We need an awareness, man, that to actually be the men we've been called and created to be, it requires stewardship of self, not self-negligence. And when you are I'm going to share this. I want to be a bit vulnerable here. I want to share this. And I'm sharing it because if I was at a funeral of a friend of mine recently, one of my very, very good friends, and he passed away at a young age. And so he was one of my best friends, but his very best friend did the eulogy. He was working with his friend in Chicago. And his very best friend, I've never seen this before at a funeral. His very best friend asked my friend's wife for permission to say this. And so he's speaking at the eulogy. I want you to check this out. He's speaking at the eulogy. He asks all the men to stand up. And we all stand up. And he says, I want to say something. And he says, such and such his wife gave me permission to say this. And he called my friend's name. He said, such and such did not take care of himself. He said it at a funeral. We all knew it because we're boys. But he asked the wife permission. He said, I feel like God wants me to use this as a moment. And our friend will want us to use this as a moment to encourage other men. And he says, it was so powerful. We're sitting here weeping and crying. I lost a friend. The wife lost a husband because he wouldn't take care of himself. And I would say to men that self-negligence is selfish. It's because we're there weeping and broken because he wouldn't take care of himself. And so that's what I would say to men. I would say I'm a better father. I'm a better husband. Hopefully I'm a better friend. Hopefully I'm a better son. Hopefully I'm a better spiritual son on the other end of 2014.
Thank you so much. Let me first start by saying thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent, because the men and the women that love them need to hear other experiences. And I'm also forced to ask, how do you have the emotional intelligence conversation with the man or men in a society where men having emotions is frowned upon? Boys having emotions is frowned upon. How do you even have the conversation with with making men feel safe?
Sure.
We know they have them. Okay, I think we're beyond the idea that they have them, but just being able to express them, talk about them, and then just be more aware of them.
Here's the thing. I think for me, here's what I've learned to do, and I'm very direct about this. I know that there are some conversations men won't hear because they don't know they need to hear them. And so for me, I am going to be, and I am like very direct. I've got an event in a couple of days that I'm going to be doing for men, and I'm talking about, and the theme of the event is called Gloves Off. Things worth fighting for, and like my session, I'm spending a couple of hours walking through fighting for my sanity, and I'm literally dealing with the emotional ramifications of the financial pressure men carry, the leadership pressure men carry, the professional pressure men carry, the pressure they put up on themselves to achieve. And so I think we have to be more proactive in talking about these things instead of reactive. I think sometimes we're waiting for people to know what they need, and they don't always know what they need.
Mm.
I think sometimes we're waiting for them to be open to having this conversation when we need to be having conversations that make them open to having the conversations.
Exactly.
And so we have to be able to show men areas where being underdeveloped emotionally or in their soul is impacting them where they don't see the impact. So something can be costing you in ways you don't know it's costing you until somebody shines a light on it and says, this is costing you more than you think. This is why all the cars aren't enough. And this is why all the money is not enough. And this is why all the women are not enough. This is why all the achievement is not enough. This is why you're not actually happy. And I think because God's blessed me with a degree of like years on this earth and being able to accomplish a few things, there's also some credibility that I can bring to that conversation because I know certain things don't bring you the fulfillment. You know, I know the thing that you think is going to bring you the fulfillment when you achieve it, when you accomplish it. I know it isn't. So I'm able to kind of look guys in the eyes in a different way. And you want to know the greatest story I heard about your dad? Here's the greatest story I heard about your dad. I was having this is the person who told me the story, but I met with a gentleman, and I'll tell you offline. Your dad married him. This is a Caucasian brother here in the States. He's a spiritual son to your dad, and your dad married him. And so I've heard some great stories about your dad. Here's one of the greatest stories I heard about your dad. This was so gangster to me. This is so gangster to me. So there's a person of influence that your dad was helping at one point, and they would come over to the island from time to time. They had a home over there, and your dad would help them. And your dad would, he'd never ask for anything. He'd just do his thing and he'd leave. And so one day, the person said, Dr. Munroe, can I do something for you? Can I do something? Can I sign something for your son? Can I do something? You won't take anything. This is what this person said your dad said. Said your dad looked at this person in the eye and said, you need what I have way more than I need what you have. And walked out of the door. I said, that's so gangster to me.
Sounds just like him.
Yeah, it was like, the material things, the success, the fame, the notoriety, it won't fill the hole in your soul. That's the point that he was making there. And I think we have to get that message to men because by God's grace, God caught me early enough in life. I would have hated to have lived most of my life, then climb the ladder of success, get to the end of my life, and realize I leaned it against the wrong wall.
Man, I hope you are listening. I know you are listening. He's saying things you may not want to hear. He's saying things you didn't know you needed to hear. And Dr. Daniels, I had you go there because men are crying on the inside. We won't see tears. My husband alone. There's this karate movie. I forgot the name of the movie. And if he could tattoo this particular quote on his body, he would. But he always says, don't let me ask, are you in pain? How do you feel? He's always like karate man bruise on the inside. And he's proud of that. And there's always a part of me that and that's fine, but it's okay for you to show us those bruises. It's okay for you to show us those scars. But there are more men than we can think of that's walking around not sharing their tears with anyone. Other men, women, they're just not because they are emotionally hurting, but they don't even know how to express. They don't even think they can. They don't think they should. And then they're teaching their young boys that you also should not cry. It's so funny. My husband wants a son so badly. We're on baby number 2 and he's about to have 2 girls. And I say, the Lord is saving the sons of the world. Because my son will not be around here talking about karate man bruise on the inside. Um, but I was talking to a guest the other day, and they said this thing. They said, "Heal the man, heal the world,"
Mm.
because men, like, that's the as you talk about the foundation, like, men is the foundation of the family, the foundation of the nation, therefore the foundation of the entire human race. And for them to just be take advantage of themselves, not even know that they're not taking care of themselves because they don't know how, they don't know where to go. Like, my heart as a social worker, as a wife, as a mother, goes out to men, um, because there is huge spaces in the world for them, huge spaces in the world for them, and I wish that we would give them more. You said something that made me think about Deion Sanders. And one of the things that Deion Sanders shares after, winning a Super Bowl. I mean, he has won Super Bowl. Like, his exact words were, "I've won Super Bowls. Like, I win Super Bowls. That is what I do. I was winning Super Bowls. I was playing in World Series, but I had no peace and no joy." I think they may have even asked him, how do you feel after winning this particular Super Bowl? And I'm paraphrasing, but he says, like, "This is it. This is what it feels like." Like, there's no feeling of fulfillment. There's no feeling of excitement. There's no feeling of all the emotional things you think you would feel. Like you say, the cars don't matter. The women don't matter. The houses don't matter. But when you get to a place where, like, you're truly living in your calling, like, the greatest reward is feeling fulfilled. And if you're not feeling fulfilled, it's definitely worth the question, what in the heck am I doing? How and the why and where in heck, where am I going? How am I doing it? What do I need to change? Um, so thank you so much. Thank you so much for
It's important.
speaking to the men.
It's important.
Where's the time gone? I hate when I look at the clock and it's like, we already been on here hours. Like, no, I don't want to. I want to keep talking. So, if you had to give a last piece of advice, the best advice you can give to men and women listening to this particular conversation that you and I are having, what would that be?
it would it, it would be it would be encouragement. Um, it'd be a word of encouragement that's kind of wrapped in a startling statement, and that is this: don't get to the end of your life and recognize you didn't do what you were supposed to do with it. I think there's this Dr. King talked about it culturally, it's inherent in my faith spiritually, this sense of not rushing but urgency. And the urgency is connected to things that happen in life that you don't know. And procrastination is always the result of the assumption you're going to have more time or another opportunity. And you don't know how much time you have. And you don't know how many opportunities you have, but you do have today.
Today.
And
You
what's
have
important
now.
is to be a good steward of your today. So those would be my words.
That is good. Thank you so much. Remember, guys, you only have today. You actually only have right now. My husband
Yeah.
loves to say, no minute is promised,
Yeah.
but you have today to start living truly who you were meant to be. Dr. Daniels, thank you so much again for being here, for being with us, for just being obedient and opening up and sharing the truth that people need to hear to set them free. One of the
Awesome.
things I love to end on, I'm a lover of this thing, and I love to share this experience with my guests. Um, I love food. I'm a big foodie. I love good restaurants. I love good quality food, ethnic foods. So please share with us in the audience what's your favorite dish, favorite meal, favorite restaurant.
I am not a foodie. It's like
Are you
I
not?
am so not a foodie.
You're not
Food is
living
fuel for
life.
me. Food it's just like
Really?
give me something to eat so I'm not hungry. Like I literally like I don't have a favorite restaurant. And like if I were to say my favorite food, it's like super simple. It's gonna be like a bacon cheeseburger. You know what I mean? It's not
Okay.
like It's not like, and I don't eat it, as frequently as I like to because it's not the best to eat health wise. But yeah, my wife is a foodie. I mean, she needs the sauces. She likes the dishes. She likes all of that. And it's just like food is fuel for me. I just eat so I'm not hungry.
Mrs. Daniels, I'm speaking to you, wherever you are. Can you please allow this husband of yours to live life and enjoy the goodness of food that is
And
on
she
the
would she,
planet?
she would she would tell you when we were dating, she would tell you based off of when we were dating and now, she feels like she's moved me a lot further away from where I was. She said everywhere I went, I just ordered chicken tenders and French fries. I'm so simple.
Oh my God. Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing. I love it. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's been another great episode here on the Purpose Finder podcast. You have learned so much from Dr. Dharius Daniels, and hopefully he will be back. Won't be the last time, but please take all of the gems, all of the nuggets and advice that you need to apply to your life today so that you can be transformed starting now. I am your host, Charisa Munroe, and until next time, see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you because purpose isn't just something you chase. It is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the two most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.